He cursed me. Buried me alive for saving his life. But fate gave me another chance, and this time I didn't save him. I married the man he once crippled, watched his empire crumble, and made him kneel to the wife he tried to drown. Some curses don't haunt you. They bury the ones who cast them. They called it a dowry, but it felt more like a bribe. As long as you're willing to marry our son Daniel Reed, Mrs. Reed said, her voice as syrupy as the tea she poured, this villa and $30 million will be yours. Plus, I'll donate $100 million to the orphanage in your name. I almost laughed out loud. She was sitting across from me in a powder blue blazer, her fingers glittering with diamonds, her face stretched in a polished mask of concern. We were in the Reed family's hilltop estate, sunlight pouring in through floor-to-ceiling windows. A butler stood quietly in the corner, pretending not to listen. In my past life I would have accepted immediately. Back then I believed in duty. In sacrifice. In saving someone doomed to die. But now I was the reincarnation of a coy spirit. Born with exceptional fortune, my presence turned danger into safety, misfortune into blessing. Anyone who married me prospered. Everyone except me. In that past life I became Daniel Reed's wife. The only son of a powerful family cursed to die at 26. I saved him from that fate. Guided him through every disaster. Protected him through every storm. And how did he repay me? With blame. With hatred. With a death sentence wrapped in a silk ribbon. I still remember his voice as he glared at me, eyes burning with resentment. Even without you I would have survived my 26th birthday. You manipulated my mother into marrying me. You caused Brittany's death. Do you know what it felt like to lose her that night? Then he stuffed me into a sack. Tied it with stones. And sank me into the ocean like garbage. Let's see if your so-called luck can help you survive now, he sneered. It didn't. I drowned, lungs bursting as darkness swallowed me whole. Until I woke up again. In this body. In this timeline. And now Mrs. Reed was sitting in front of me, using the same words again. The same desperate eyes. The same offer. But I was no longer the same woman. I smiled politely. Mrs. Reed, I'm flattered. But my so-called good fortune is just a name. I wouldn't dare ruin your son's future. She blinked, clearly startled. Claire. Behind her, Daniel strode in from the hallway, dressed in casual loungewear like this was just another Sunday. His face twisted with familiar contempt. Mom, I told you, he snapped. She's nothing but a scammer. She just admitted it herself. Get rid of her. His eyes dragged over me, cold, calculating. The kind of look you give a smudge on a designer rug. I stood slowly and brushed imaginary lint from my coat. I've met people like you before, Daniel. What reincarnated coy? What natural-born luck? It's all nonsense, right? He smirked, not knowing that I was watching his aura, the dark shadows already curling at the edge of his face. Death clinging to him like smoke. He was reborn too. I could see it in the way his eyes lingered on mine, like he remembered more than he let on. But unlike me, he had learned nothing. In our past life, Mrs. Reed had begged me to marry Daniel. She never mentioned Brittany, the girlfriend of 5 years, the one he clung to like a lifeline. Our wedding took place on his birthday. The same day his death had been predicted. He lived. For Brittany. Brittany got blackout drunk and died in a fiery crash, taking several innocent lives with her. He never forgave me. Never once considered that he could have told me the truth. That he could have chosen not to marry me. Instead he blamed me for everything. Then tortured me until I broke. Not this time. Mrs. Reed reached for my arm as I walked past. Claire, please. He's just upset. Don't take it personally, she added quickly when Daniel rolled his eyes and scoffed. Oh, I don't, I said smoothly. But you should. Daniel's jaw clenched. You really think you're something special, don't you? He turned to his mother. Brittany and I were going to get engaged. She even went to Starlight Temple to get a charm blessed for me. She's going to be by my side. I'll be fine without this fraud. Mrs. Reed looked torn. Desperate. But not for me, for the illusion of control. Left with no other choice, Daniel motioned for the butler. Walk her out. But I didn't need an escort. As I stepped outside, I paused to take in the Reed estate one last time. The place where I had once lived like a caged bird. Where I had cooked, cleaned, nursed, and bled for a man who never saw me as human. This time I hailed a cab and told the driver a different address. To a different house. A different man. A better one. The villa Ethan Cole lived in was even grander than the Reeds, but it didn't reek of blood money. Ivy clung to the stone walls. There was a koi pond in the courtyard. How ironic. When the butler opened the door, I saw him sitting in a sunlit corner, a book open on his lap. He looked up startled. Ethan Cole. Still in his wheelchair. Still the same man whose quiet kindness had once tried, futilely, to save me. He was wearing a navy cashmere sweater, sleeves rolled to the elbow. His dark hair tousled like he'd been running his hands through it. When his eyes met mine, something flickered there. Recognition. Confusion. Curiosity. Claire, he said. I smiled. Will you marry me? Ethan blinked at me. I watched the exact moment the question hit him like a wave. One hand tightening around the armrest of his wheelchair, the other instinctively brushing his knee as if to confirm this wasn't a dream. I'm sorry, he said slowly, eyes narrowing in gentle confusion. What did you just say? I walked forward, letting the sunlight fall across my face. I asked you to marry me, Ethan. He set the book aside, visibly stunned. Claire, we've only spoken once. At the orphanage fundraiser. You barely said more than a few words. You barely remember me, I thought. But I remembered everything. In my past life, on the day I married Daniel Reed, Ethan had found me in the dressing room, quiet and distant, as if sensing something was wrong. He had offered me help then, told me I didn't need to go through with it, that he could wire me the money I needed if this was about the donation. He had no idea how close I was to walking away. No idea how much those words meant to me. But I'd ignored him then. Because I thought I was saving lives. Because I believed I had a duty. That same day, Ethan had tried to stop what came after. Tried to pull me out when Daniel turned violent. But Daniel's wealth and influence outmatched Ethan's struggling business. And the accident he orchestrated left Ethan permanently paralyzed. He died not long after. A car crash. No one knew it was sabotage. But I did. And now here he was. Alive. Breathing. And confused as hell. You don't have to answer now, I said, trying to keep my tone steady. But I'm serious. He blinked again, then gave a stunned little chuckle. Miss Evans, does the orphanage need donations or something? I can have my secretary handle it. I burst into laughter. Not because it was funny, but because I had no idea how else to react. He thought I was fundraising. Ethan. I walked up to him and knelt down, looking directly into his hesitant eyes. I'm not joking. I was born under a lucky star. Everyone I'm close to flourishes. If you marry me, your life will change. He tilted his head, intrigued but unconvinced. Claire, you're not a product. You're not something to be bought for good fortune. His voice softened, a slight sadness creeping in. And me? I'm a man in a wheelchair. I'm not exactly the dream husband. My chest ached. His legs had been crushed trying to save a child with autism from a runaway car. A stranger's child. He hadn't even hesitated. And in return he lost everything. Mobility, his rising career, his family's business. He had never complained. Daniel mocked him endlessly. I leaned forward and whispered, what if I told you I actually like you? His eyes widened. I didn't give him time to respond. On instinct, I leaned in and kissed the corner of his lips. It was feather-light. Barely there. But he stilled. And then he reached up, cupped the back of my head and kissed me properly. Fully. Desperately. When he pulled back, his voice was low, husky. Claire Evans, he said, since you've chosen me, don't you dare regret it. That night, I lay in the guest room of his villa, staring at the ceiling and letting the silence wrap around me like a cocoon. A silence I hadn't known in my past life. A peace that felt like freedom. The next morning, Ethan wheeled himself into the dining room where I was waiting with coffee. I set the wedding date, he said casually, sipping his own cup. I blinked. What? He glanced up at me, lips curled into a smirk. You asked me to marry you. I said yes. It's only right we pick a date. I raised an eyebrow. That was fast. You think I'd let you get away now? He said with a grin. And it's poetic, actually. I said it for 10 days from now. I narrowed my eyes. Why that day? He reached for his phone, tapped the calendar, then showed it to me. March 28th. Daniel Reed's 26th birthday. I stared at the date, my breath catching for a second. I saw the headlines last year, Ethan said softly. The rumors about him being cursed. The stories that circulated around Starlight Temple. It's nonsense, right? Of course, I said quickly, brushing it off. Just gossip. But we both knew the truth. Ethan's gaze dropped to my hand. Let's make it official then. The engagement. I've already wired over $30 million to your account. And I've got a villa in your name. My eyes widened. Ethan. He cut me off with a warm smile. I know you didn't ask for any of that. But you deserve everything. I was stunned into silence. And now, he said, rising slowly and walking across the room with a cane, let's go pick out your wedding dress. The boutique we chose was elegant, tucked away in an upscale corner of the city. As I moved through the racks of silk and lace, I felt a lightness I hadn't known before. Until a familiar voice sliced through the air like a knife. Well, look who it is. I turned around slowly. Daniel Reed stood in the entryway, arms crossed, his smirk as sharp as I remembered. And beside him, Brittany Hale, his longtime girlfriend. She looped her arm through his and offered me a condescending smile. Shopping for your discount dress, Claire? Ethan appeared from the back room just as Daniel's eyes landed on our interlaced fingers. His smirk faded. A scammer and a cripple, Daniel said flatly. Perfect match. My blood boiled. Watch your mouth, I snapped. I didn't take your family's money. I didn't marry you. You have no right to insult me. Brittany leaned into Daniel with that syrupy tone she always used when trying to sound harmless. So you're the one he was talking about. The woman who faked a blessing to G. Daniel nodded, silent. People like you, Brittany said sweetly, eyes sharp, we call gold diggers. She waved over a clerk, gestured toward a rack of clearance gowns, and had them wheeled in front of me. This is more your level. Before I could speak, Ethan moved forward, his body between mine and theirs. Even seated, even calm, he radiated more power than Daniel ever had. If you insult my fiancé again, he said coldly, I won't hesitate to destroy you. Completely. Daniel's face darkened instantly, but he quickly schooled his expression into something smug. He stepped around Ethan's wheelchair, clearly trying to maintain control. I knew that look. He didn't take Ethan's threat seriously, he never had in our past life either. But I had changed. And so had Ethan. If it really came down to the two of them facing off, I thought, who would win this time? Honestly, my money was on Ethan. Daniel let out a tight chuckle. There's no need to make this too ugly, Ethan, he said with faux civility, brushing non-existent lint off his suit jacket. We've known each other for a while. No need to cause a scene. A beat passed. Then he added, since we've both scheduled weddings 10 days from now, and coincidentally at the same venue, the Celestial Grand Hotel, how about we make it a joint event? My stomach flipped. He looked directly at me. One venue. One day. Two couples. A celebration to remember. Ethan tensed beside me. He didn't want me embarrassed. Didn't want me compared to Daniel's wealthy, polished fiancé or to stand next to a man the city still considered a golden heir. He opened his mouth to decline. But I squeezed his hand first. Looked Daniel straight in the eye. And said, sure. After all, we'll see who ends up being the joke that day. Daniel's smirk widened, falsely thinking I had taken the bait. Then let's look forward to a double celebration, he said, giving Brittany's waist a little squeeze. I didn't miss the flicker of annoyance in her expression at being used as a prop. Before we left, while Ethan was at the counter speaking to the receptionist about final fittings, Daniel walked up beside me. His voice dropped to a warning hiss. Claire Evans, I won't give you another chance to come between me and Brittany. I'll survive my 26th birthday just fine without you. And when I do, when everyone sees you're nothing but a fraud, let's see if Ethan still wants you then. I tilted my head and muttered under my breath, what a psycho. That night Ethan was quiet. Not withdrawn. Not angry. But visibly unsettled. I sat beside him in the library watching the fire crackle. He kept running his hand along the edge of his glass, brow furrowed in thought. You've been staring at that same spot for 15 minutes, I finally said. He sighed and looked at me. Claire, you agreed to a joint wedding. I did. People are going to compare us, he said quietly. Me. Daniel still has influence. I still have this. He gestured to his wheelchair. Don't you think you'll regret marrying someone like me? I stared at him for a long moment. Then leaned in and kissed him once, then twice, all over his face like a child peppering affection. He looked shocked. His ears flushed red. What's that smell? I teased, leaning closer. Is that jealousy I detect? Ethan let out a reluctant chuckle, eyes rolling. Claire. No, seriously, it's strong. Might need to open a window. He laughed again, softer this time. I brushed his hair back. Listen to me. You're nothing like Daniel. He doesn't even come close. I didn't marry you because I pitied you. I married you because I trust you. He swallowed hard. You're just trying to flatter me. Maybe. But it's working. His heart beat faster. I felt it against my hand. And that was all the reassurance I needed. The next 10 days were a whirlwind of planning. Ethan made sure every detail of our wedding reflected my tastes, down to the embroidery on the napkins. He had a clear vision but never pushed it. Everything was discussed, decided together. In contrast, Daniel and Brittany were putting on a show for the city. They hosted press appearances, leaked spontaneous photos at Starlight Temple, and fed rumors that Daniel had overcome a deadly curse and was now poised to inherit unimaginable fortune. The charm from Starlight Temple was displayed in every photo. The narrative was clear. Brittany had saved Daniel. Brittany was his fated love. Brittany had replaced the fraud, who failed to marry into the Reed family. And that fraud, of course, was me. The stories worsened by the day. Friends of friends, socialites, gossip columnists. She tried to marry Daniel for money and got thrown out. She made up some coy luck nonsense to get into the family. I heard she cursed him. Brittany's trying to break the curse by marrying him instead. I ignored them mostly, until one night I received a message. From Daniel Reed. Claire Evans. Just wait. You tricked me last time. You got Brittany killed. I'm not falling for it again. I blocked him without hesitation. Let the man curse my name from whatever corner he was rotting in. Then came the wedding day. Celestial Grand Hotel had 2 wings. One draped in gold, white and blush pink for Daniel and Brittany. The other in silver, deep blue and wild orchids for Ethan and me. Daniel stood at the entrance with Brittany, greeting guests with an infuriatingly perfect smile. His charm from Starlight Temple glimmered proudly around his neck. When I arrived, he did a double take. Well, he said loudly. Isn't today your wedding too? Where's your groom? Didn't show up. I gave him a serene smile. He got held up. He'll be here soon. He raised a brow, clearly not buying it. Held up. Or maybe, he realized what he was marrying. Brittany giggled, pretending to cover her mouth with ladylike modesty. She was wearing a custom couture gown surrounded by a group of well-dressed heirs, all of them eyeing me with thinly veiled judgment. Logan really lost out, I heard someone whisper behind me. She's a scammer and he's disabled? She's just marrying into money. Another voice chimed in. Didn't she try to marry Daniel? Lied about her fortune, got rejected and now clinging to Ethan. I kept walking. Until I came face to face with Mrs. Reed. She was nothing like the woman who once cried and begged me to marry her son. She now stood tall beside Brittany, her expression cold and proud. She gave me a look full of veiled hostility and said smoothly, a person should be grounded. Work for what they want. Relying on shortcuts and fake blessings to gain wealth. That always ends in failure. The crowd looked at me then. Their scorn tasted metallic in the air. I smiled gently and replied, don't celebrate too early. The day's not over yet. Her expression darkened. Just then the doors swung open. And Ethan Cole walked in on his own 2 feet. The room gasped. He was dressed in a tailored navy tuxedo, his movements slow but sure, guided by a cane but without hesitation. He walked straight to my side, took my hand in his and turned to face the crowd. His voice was calm, but firm. As her husband, he said, I should be the one managing my wife, not the other way around. Shock rippled like electricity. Whispers echoed. Someone screamed. His charm, Mr. Reed's charm is on fire. Everyone turned. Daniel's sacred charm, the one blessed at Starlight Temple, was burning. Not smoking. Not smoldering. Burning. He screamed, ripping it off his neck, trying to extinguish it, but it crumbled to ash in his hands. I looked at the wall clock. 7 p.m. Exactly 5 hours until midnight. Would he survive? We were about to find out. Gasps echoed like thunder in the ballroom. Daniel stood frozen, the scorched remnants of the charm from Starlight Temple crumbling through his fingers. His expression twisted, not just in confusion but fear. Real bone-deep fear. Brittany rushed to his side, voice sharp and brittle. Daniel, are you okay? He didn't answer. He just kept staring at his empty hand like it had betrayed him. A beat later, a deafening crack split the air. I turned just in time to see the crystal chandelier above Daniel shudder. One of the cables snapped with a metallic twang. Someone screamed. The chandelier groaned. Then it fell. Straight down. Chaos exploded. Guests scattered in every direction. Tables overturned. Wine glasses shattered. Only the quick reflexes of the event MC, who tackled Daniel out of the way, prevented it from being fatal. They both landed hard against the marble floor, shards of crystal exploding around them like glass grenades. Ethan yanked me behind him instinctively, shielding me with his body. Security rushed in. Staff screamed into radios. The ballroom descended into an orchestrated mess of panic and disbelief. Daniel sat on the floor, dazed, breathing hard. His smug, untouchable air was gone. Swept away in a single swing of fate. Ethan helped me back to my feet, steady and composed. "We're leaving," he whispered to me. But before we could move, someone shrieked. "The curtains, they're on fire." I turned, horrified, as the flames danced unnaturally fast along the sheer ivory fabric at the edge of the ballroom, crawling like hungry fingers toward Daniel. "Daniel, my son!" Mrs. Reed screamed. Staff threw buckets of water. Someone grabbed a fire extinguisher. Water sprayed in every direction. Daniel was soaked from head to toe, his tux ruined, his expression hollow. He stumbled up, turned slowly, and locked eyes with me. "You," he growled, stepping forward. "It's you." His pupils were dilated. He looked half insane. "The master said I had an emperor's destiny. There's no way anything could go wrong unless you did something." He charged. Ethan stepped in front of me instantly, his cane raised defensively. But Daniel didn't even make it 2 steps. His foot slipped on a bottle of spilled champagne and he fell hard, face first, toward the ground. I gasped. Because right where he was landing, a jagged shard of crystal stood upright like a dagger. He was going to fall on it, neck first. At the last second, Mrs. Reed screamed and kicked it away, catching her son just before he landed. He was shaking now. Bloody from the glass embedded in his hands. The invincible Daniel Reed, now soaked, humiliated, and trembling in front of an entire elite audience. Guests whispered in horror. "Is he cursed? Wasn't tonight his 26th birthday? He almost died. Twice." Mrs. Reed looked around at the wreckage. Broken glass, fire damage, soaked table linens. Her voice dropped to a whisper as she asked, almost to herself, "Could the fortune teller have been right? Is he really cursed to die before midnight?" The room was still heavy with tension when a man in golden robes swept into the ballroom. Eyes turned. The whispers turned into stunned silence. It was the master from Starlight Temple. As soon as he laid eyes on Daniel, his face turned grim. "A murderous aura surrounds him," he said without preamble. "Mr. Reed may not live through the night." Mrs. Reed nearly fainted. Brittany burst into tears. Daniel, shaken and drenched, turned to the master like a drowning man reaching for a lifeboat. "Isn't there anything we can do? Anything to stop it?" The master looked around, eyes sweeping over the guests. Then he stopped. Stopped on me. Surprise flickered in his expression. Oh, recognition. He walked toward me slowly, reverently. "This young woman," he said, voice clear and booming, "is the reincarnation of the Koi spirit. She possesses unparalleled luck. If she becomes your wife, you will live a life of peace and prosperity. The curse will vanish." You could hear a pin drop in that ballroom. Mrs. Reed stared at me like I was a revelation. Daniel looked like he had just seen a ghost. They remembered. Deep down they knew. I had saved him once before. And now they wanted me to do it again. But this time, I wasn't theirs to claim. Ethan stepped between me and the master, blocking his reach. He didn't speak to anyone else. Just leaned down and whispered to me, "Don't be scared. I'm here." I nodded. Then I turned to the Reed family with a faint, almost amused smile. "Looks like you're finally starting to realize just how wrong you were." Mrs. Reed was the first to break. She dropped to her knees, right there in her beaded gown, and crawled toward me, her voice shaking. "Claire, Please. I was wrong before. I shouldn't have doubted you. Please. Please save my son. I'll give you anything. 100 million. Please. Marry him tonight. Put on a dress. Just once more. Behind me I felt Ethan stiffen. His jaw clenched. I've respected you, Mrs. Reed, he said tightly. As an elder. But for you to try to take my wife away from me, here in front of everyone, that's beneath your dignity. She didn't stop groveling. I took a breath and said, fine. Ethan turned to me stunned. Pain flickered across his face. But behind my back I gently squeezed his hand. Wait for it. Then I faced Mrs. Reed. I'll do it, but on 2 conditions. She clung to my words like they were lifelines. Name them. Anything. Whatever you want. I pointed at Daniel, whose face was still twisted in pride and fury. First, I said, he has to kneel. Right here. And kowtow to me 3 times. With each bow he has to say, Claire Evans, I was wrong, ma'am. Loud enough for everyone to hear. The crowd gasped. You vile woman, Daniel hissed. You're dreaming. He charged at me again, but slipped on the marble floor and landed hard. This time his head hit the polished ground with a crack. He groaned, dazed and bleeding. Mrs. Reed burst into sobs. Daniel. I've given you everything your whole life. Just once. Can't you lower your head to save it? Daniel trembled. Then clenched his jaw. And dropped to his knees. He kowtowed once, forehead slamming the floor. Claire Evans, I was wrong, ma'am. Claire Evans, I was wrong, ma'am. A 3rd time. Blood now trailing from his brow. Claire Evans. I was wrong, ma'am. The crowd watched in stunned silence. I turned slightly and pointed to Ethan. 2nd condition, I said. You say, 3 times, Daniel Reed is no match for Ethan Cole. Loud, clear, and proud. Daniel's entire face turned crimson. He had mocked Ethan endlessly after his accident. Called him weak. Worthless. A cripple. And now he had to praise him in front of everyone. He bowed again. Daniel Reed is no match for Ethan Cole. Daniel Reed is no match for Ethan Cole. And again. Daniel Reed is no match for Ethan Cole. His pride was bleeding out faster than his forehead. Then he raised his hand toward me. I did it. Now marry me. I smiled brightly, reached into my purse, and pulled out 2 red booklets. Oops, I said sweetly. I forgot to mention. Ethan and I registered our marriage this morning. The color drained from Daniel's face. You played me, he rasped. He staggered back, then suddenly clutched his chest and collapsed. Panic erupted again. Guests screamed. Staff called for ambulances. The 2 weddings ended in disaster. One in love. And one in ruin. The sirens wailed as Daniel was wheeled into the back of the ambulance. Mrs. Reed clung to the edge of the stretcher, weeping. Brittany sobbed uncontrollably as cameras flashed and reporters, who hadn't even been invited, snuck photos behind the hedges of Celestial Grand. What was supposed to be the wedding of the year had become a full-blown media circus. And I didn't feel a single shred of guilt. Back in the private lounge of the hotel, Ethan and I sat side by side on a velvet settee, hands still clasped, our marriage certificate resting on the table in front of us like a quiet victory banner. He finally turned to me, brow furrowed, eyes searching. So, he said carefully, did we actually have a wedding? I tilted my head at him, then leaned in to kiss him, slow and soft. Then I picked up the red certificate and tapped it against his chest. We have this, I whispered. As long as I have you by my side, it doesn't matter whether there was a wedding or not. He stared at me for a moment before pulling me into a hug so tight it nearly knocked the wind out of me. But as the laughter faded and the room quieted again, a shadow crossed his expression. His jaw tightened. I meant what I said earlier, he murmured. About protecting you. I blinked. From what? He looked down at my hand still resting in his lap. That master. The one from Starlight Temple. When he said you were the reincarnation of the koi spirit. You don't actually believe that, do you? I teased, nudging him lightly. I don't know what to believe anymore, he admitted. But I do know people in power are drawn to things they can't control. And that includes you now. I fell quiet. He wasn't wrong. Over the next week, the fallout from the wedding chaos was worse than I ever could have anticipated. And exactly what I expected. The Reed family's carefully built empire began to crack. Business partners distanced themselves. Some even pulled out of major joint ventures, citing unforeseen liabilities and spiritual concerns. Stockholders panicked. One of their real estate projects in the capital faced a sudden halt due to investor withdrawals. All this after a chandelier nearly killed Daniel. After sacred charms from the most revered temple burst into flames. After a bridegroom collapsed on his birthday. And the whispers didn't stop. Wasn't he supposed to be lucky? Didn't that girl save him before? Why did he collapse after she said she was married? As carefully as the Reeds tried to spin the narrative, the damage was done. The curse had stuck. Meanwhile, Ethan's business, quietly, steadily, boomed. It wasn't just luck. He was brilliant. Tenacious. But after our marriage, contracts that had been stalled were suddenly greenlit. Long-lost investors reached out. His old rehabilitation network even offered to sponsor full treatment now that he was recovering mobility. One evening, just as I was folding up honeymoon brochures, Ethan received a call that could change everything. A potential $100 million international logistics contract. He needed to fly out for the meeting. I packed his suitcase, straightened his tie, and handed him a protein bar like a nervous wife seeing her soldier off to war. He kissed my forehead. "You'll be safe." I laughed. What could happen in one night? He paused at the door. "That's what you said before you met me." I waved him off with a grin. But when I returned home from dropping Ethan at the airport, something felt wrong. The villa was too quiet. The usual guards stationed around the property were missing. My stomach sank. I barely had time to process the eerie silence before something sharp jabbed into my neck. Darkness closed in before I could scream. I woke up to the worst face imaginable. Daniel Reed. Only it wasn't the pristine Daniel I remembered. The trust fund heir, the golden boy, the polished liar. He looked like a corpse. His once clear skin was now covered in blotches, bruises, and surgical scars. His eyes were bloodshot and his head was shaved, likely for medical exams. But the thing that hit me hardest was the way his veins pulsed visibly under his scalp like something was boiling beneath the surface. His voice rasped. "Claire Evans, you were reborn too, weren't you?" I didn't flinch. "That's right." He let out a wet laugh, one that turned into a painful wheeze. "You must feel pretty damn smug," he whispered. "Last life I buried you with my own hands. Now the wheels turned. I'm the one rotting." I stared at him without pity. "Yes," I said. "It feels incredible." His smile faded. "So Brittany was right. You really do hate me." He took a deep breath, then said almost calmly, "The doctor says I'm riddled with tumors. I've got maybe a week. Isn't that hilarious? All this time I thought the curse was just a scam cooked up by my mother. And now, here we are." A long silence stretched between us. Then he lunged. His hands wrapped around my throat, tight, choking. "Well then," he snarled, "why don't you die with me?" I clawed at his wrists, gasping. "Let go. Last time you saved me and Brittany died. This time you refused to save me and I'm dying anyway. Either way, you're my curse, Claire. You are what ruined me." He paused. Just for a second. His voice dropped, quieter now. "Did you ever love me?" "Not even once." I didn't hesitate. "No," I whispered. "Never. I'm not that pathetic." Something flickered in his eyes, shame maybe. Maybe relief. "Good," he said darkly. "Then I won't feel guilty taking you with me." He raised his hand. Bang. The gunshot ripped through the silence like lightning. Daniel's body jerked once, then slumped forward, lifeless. Blood oozed from the hole in his temple. Behind him, officers stormed in. And behind them, Ethan. He was breathless, disheveled, wild-eyed. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and dropped to his knees beside me, pulling me into his arms like he needed to make sure I was still real. "It's over," he murmured. "You're safe. Claire, it's over." The Reed family's downfall was swift. Overnight their assets were frozen. Their deals terminated. Rumors spread faster than fire. But the final blow came from within. Turns out Mrs. Reed had tried to flee the country with embezzled funds. It was Brittany, yes Brittany, who turned her in, her face blank on the news footage as the police hauled the once regal matriarch through the airport in handcuffs. In court they turned on each other like rabid dogs. Blaming. Screaming. Dragging each other down. The once golden reeds were finished. Me. I was home, cooking soup in the kitchen. Ethan came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. His hand slid over my belly, warm and protective. For the 1,800th time, he said softly, I really hope it's a girl. I rolled my eyes, laughing. And if it's a boy? He kissed my temple. Then we raise him to never become a Daniel Reed. Fair enough. The villa was quiet. Too quiet for a couple who had just escaped a death prophecy, a failed assassination, and the collapse of one of the most powerful families in the city. But inside our home there was peace. And soup. Ethan leaned against the kitchen counter, watching me as I stirred the pot. Smells better than most restaurants I've been to, he said with a small smile. That's because I haven't let you near it, I replied. He chuckled and stepped behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. One hand slid over my belly, warm and protective. Still hoping for a girl, he murmured for the 1,000th time. I rolled my eyes, resting my hand over his. And if it's a boy? Then we raise him to never be anything like Daniel Reed. That name didn't sting anymore. Not like it used to. Because now Daniel Reed was nothing more than a headline. A cautionary tale whispered behind glass conference doors and swirled into cocktail gossip by the city's elite. The man who mocked fate. The heir who collapsed on his wedding day. The empire that crumbled in a single night. After Daniel's death, the Reed family unraveled faster than anyone thought possible. Mrs. Reed tried to sell their assets, quietly at first, then desperately. But no buyer wanted their name tied to bad luck. It was Brittany who delivered the final blow. She turned in Mrs. Reed for financial fraud. The woman who once ruled over gala invitations and charity boards was arrested at the airport, her passport flagged, her luggage packed with unreported cash. The courtroom footage was brutal. Mother and almost daughter-in-law screaming at each other, dragging skeletons into public view. Each one more humiliating than the last. No fortune remained to hide behind. No illusion to uphold. The Reeds were finished. And I, Claire Evans, was finally free. We didn't celebrate. Not publicly. But we did live. Quietly, luxuriously, and completely. Ethan's company tripled in size over the next 4 months. He turned down a Fortune cover story just to spend time helping me plan our honeymoon. He left the boardroom behind every evening to come home, pull me into his lap and ask what I'd been craving that day. Sometimes it was strawberries. Sometimes silence. Sometimes him. The city slowly stopped whispering. People forgot the girl who once stood outside the Reed estate with nothing but a lucky name and a broken engagement. They forgot the chandelier that nearly killed a groom. The burning charm. The chaos. But they didn't forget the legacy Ethan and I built. We donated to the orphanage in full. Built 3 new children's centers. Launched a scholarship for kids who, like us, knew what it meant to be underestimated. One afternoon after a press event, Ethan pulled me aside behind the curtains and kissed my cheek. You know what today is? He asked. I blinked. Wednesday. He laughed. It's been exactly 1 year since you walked into my life and asked me to marry you. I smiled. And you said yes even though you thought I was running a fundraiser scam. Best scam I ever fell for, he whispered, pulling me close. That night we danced in our living room barefoot to no music at all. Months passed. One morning I stepped into the doctor's office alone, heart racing, palms clammy. When the technician turned the screen toward me and smiled, I already knew. It was a girl. I cried the whole way home. Ethan wrapped me in his arms, forehead pressed to mine, tears in his own eyes. He didn't say, I told you so. He just whispered, thank you. As if I had handed him the stars. The day she was born, the rain fell soft and steady on the roof. Our daughter came into the world with a single cry, and a pair of eyes that seemed far too wise for a newborn. Ethan held her like she was the first thing he'd ever truly been afraid to break. I want to name her Hope, he said quietly. I looked up at him. Hope. He nodded. Because that's what you gave me the moment you kissed me. I agreed. Because even in a world that tried to bury me with curses, I had rewritten the ending. Hope. Not vengeance. Family. Not revenge. And peace. Finally, peace. As we watched our daughter sleep that night, her tiny chest rising and falling, Ethan slipped an arm around my shoulder. Do you ever wonder, he whispered, what would have happened if I hadn't said yes? I looked up at him. Then I would have made you. He smiled. But I wasn't joking. Because in every version of this life I would have found him. Even if I had to walk through fire to get there. Maybe I did. The end.